Any. And to begin with, and in keeping with tradition and state law, is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will kick things off with Emily Brock talking about a GMAX amendment with Jackson Contractor Group.
Good morning. This is to sort of refresh your memory. We have a contract, an AIA 133 contract with Jackson Construction that we've had in the works for several years. And part of that is that we are basically doing the design build process where there's a guaranteed maximum price on each one of the projects. And so this project is just for, Dave, you might have to put on your earmuffs. I'm sorry to say this project is for demolition or deconstruction of the existing maintenance shop on the fairgrounds. At the commission's request, we explored many options to save this building, and unfortunately it was not financially feasible to rehabilitate it and the commercial and culinary buildings. It would have cost even more than those buildings. And so we're sad to see it go because it was in the poorest shape of the three and the least useful to us or the Weed District because it's going to be right in the middle of the Rocky Mountain Gardens. It was selected for removal. So we explored moving the building to other locations. Commissioner Strohmeyer really worked really hard on trying to, and we offered to pay for its relocation, but we couldn't get anyone to bite on it. The other entities concluded that it was beyond repair, as we did. So we're left with three options for removal: demolition, deconstruction, or a hybrid of the two. And although the most expensive and time-consuming option is the full deconstruction, that is what we're recommending to meet the county's sustainability goals. I think that I put in the RCA the sort of breakdown of the three options, but this one costs $150,000. And it will take 11 weeks. Heritage Timber was the low bidder. So the way that it works with Jackson is Jackson's the general, but then we still bid out the project. And so Heritage Timber, which I included in the agenda item, was the low bidder for deconstruction of this contract, deconstruction of this building. And so they'll be the subcontractor. And we are hoping to work with them to salvage, it is part of the contract, they get to keep the materials, but we're working on potentially buying back some of the pieces that tell a story on the fairgrounds that we could use. And so this will be paid for out of the Fairgrounds Special District redevelopment budget. And then we will absorb part of it, at least, into the financing for the Rocky Mountain Exploration Center and be reimbursed by that financing package.
Well, I'm super glad that it's going to be deconstructed rather than demolished, and Heritage Timber is a fantastic company, so we're in good hands, and it's sorry that it couldn't be reused as a building.
Yeah, it always pains me if we are not able to adaptively reuse a historic structure like this, but as Emily mentioned, we turned over a lot of stones trying to find folks who would be on the receiving end of this building and be able to put it back into some sort of use. And even when we were willing to cover the costs of relocating the building, it just did not generate any takers. So I too am very glad that we'll be deconstructing as opposed to demolishing. And
I've worked with Heritage Timber before. They will do a great job of selecting pieces that tell a story because history is important to them as well. So I think this is a great plan B.
Well done.
And Bryce is on the call. Bryce, do you want to chime in?
I think you covered it. Thank you.
I'm going to motion to sign the GMAX amendment.
I'll second.
Any further discussion, or is there any public comment on this? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. Next, we have Jason Hauser, a request that we approve a cleaning contract with Garden City Janitorial.
Morning. Yeah, this is one that we've been working on for quite a while. We've been under a temporary contract with them for probably the last 6 months. We went out through the RFP, put it out to bid. They won the contract, and so this is just an extension of that. It's, you know, it's for 13 buildings, where the last cleaning contract was for 9. This is, it's $30,500 a month. And then there's some daily disinfectant cleaning that we're doing above and beyond that for another $7,000 a month. So yeah, and this is for 3 years with an option to extend for 2 extra years.
Jason, if I remember right, there was some conversation around people who work for the janitorial companies. I mean, and some of these folks had recently been incarcerated, but not for crimes that would have anything to do with stealing the sort of things you would see in an office. And some people were incarcerated for other crimes. How did you guys kind of navigate that, and what did you come up with?
So there's some literature in the contract, and Jason Emery's done a great job on that, reaching out to other people and putting the appropriate literature in there. And we're having a contract. We'll talk with Sean Monger, Garden City today, about that. But there's some literature in there. We do have some areas that will need certain background checks to be able to work in those areas. And then there'll be other areas that are open to anybody that they can get for people that may need a leg up or a first start. So
Great.
yeah,
Well, I'm really glad that it's not a rigid no to everybody. That would seem inappropriate.
no.
And it looks like Jason Emery
Is here.
has his hand up.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of work, but I think we came up with something that's pretty reasonable,
Great.
that, you know, excludes certain crimes, but not in perpetuity, you know, punish people forever. I think we're able to come up with language that meets our CJIS requirements for the criminal justice systems in those areas, so that we're meeting our regulatory legal requirements in those areas. So I think it strikes a good balance with, you know, protecting the county's assets and our information, as well as, again, not perpetually punishing people for things that they probably have already served their time for, or paid their price. So it's a tricky thing, but I feel pretty solid about it, that it's reasonable and not overly arduous to manage either.
Great. Thanks for being so thoughtful and making this happen.
Yep, thank you.
Was that your motion, Josh?
Yes, I move we request board approval on the cleaning contract with Garden City Janitorial. Thanks.
Great. Second, and thank you guys for navigating that and making it happen. Striking that balance.
Likewise. Any further discussion or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jason and Jason.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay, Nicole Rush, you're bringing before us a matter regarding Alps Insurance Agency.
All right, this is a final draw request for the BSTF grant supporting Alps. They have created a total of 4 jobs. So this is a draw request for the most recent 2. We've already drawn on the other 2. And this will be the last draw, and then we'll close out their grant contract.
Great. Any questions?
No. Way to go, Alps. Glad this is.
Yeah, way to go, Alps.
Yeah.
I move that we approve the request for payment to the Big Sky Economic Development Trust Fund grant.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Nicole.
All right, and our final, actually not our final, our next action item today is brought to us by Ellen Leahy. It's a lease agreement for the use of Lucky's market space. And I believe this is related to vaccination. Ellen? You're muted, Ellen.
While she's unmuting, I'm just really excited that we get to say that this is related to vaccination. We're almost a year after we just learned what COVID-19 was.
Yeah, it is exciting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we have you.
A little fuzzy, but you're there.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So thank you for getting this on the agenda quickly. there's a lot of chicken and eggs here. How much vaccine, when can you open it? And I think I may have guessed a day off because there are probably, there's a handful more changes that I think our legal team wishes to see from the mall on this contract. But I think Anna can speak to those.
There's our legal team there now.
Brian West in our office has been negotiating this lease, but he just sent me an email about 5 minutes ago that the Southgate has approved the requested changes that we needed to make. I think that most of the changes were based on the fact that the lease anticipated a retail use of the space as opposed to how we're using it. So we just needed to clean some stuff up, but it is now been approved. And I believe Annie and Chris, you have a copy of the lease that's been approved by Legal Risk and Southgate.
Yeah. So Anna, it's Chris. Yes, we do. And just so the commission's aware, what we did was put up a draft of that still had the language related to the retail space, knowing that there would just be those minor changes, but they don't change things like cost or any of those things. It's really very minor language stuff. So I don't think it would impact the public's desire around or notice around this lease.
I agree with that, Chris.
Okay, so we'd be moving the contract as amended.
Correct. And
Anything
Pam Morfitt, who has done all the logistical work and a lot of the communication negotiation with the mall up to this point, is on the call if she has anything to add or if you have questions of her. She's our logistics chief.
Thanks, Pam. Anything you'd like to add?
Muted.
Sorry, too many buttons. Good morning. I don't have anything to add, but here to answer some questions to the best of my ability. I also have attending on this meeting is Lee McCoy, and he is my vaccine branch base camp manager. So along with myself, he has been one of the instrumental folks in addition communicating with the Washington Prime Group out at the Southgate Mall and in securing the Lucky site. Thank you.
When do you guys think you'll be up and running there?
Ellen, go ahead.
We expect by the end of this week and cannot state a public date yet because we didn't get vaccine directly this week. Our request was not fulfilled. However, another entity did, and the vaccine coordination team is looking at separating out the doses we would need because of the type of vaccine that it is. We have to be careful on what day we open it because we can't leave some of it open. So that's my long answer to not knowing exactly what date to put forward, but we are poised to have people screen out and sign up and register as soon as we can confirm that date. But it will be this,
a lot
this
of work
week
to transform the space to make it usable.
I'll jump in and then I can, if Jason Hauser or Jason Emery want to chime in. The space is fairly usable as it is. What we did need to do was do some fast track with getting some internet, getting some power set up there, as well as getting some keys, some doors keyed and getting those keys. But at this point in time, as of today, we will start to move some of the supplies that we've been coordinating and securing to get in there so we can start at least setting up how things will look prior to the vaccine clinic actually be up and running.
And then you guys are going to be running out of there when you have vaccines 6 days a week. Is that correct?
Correct. The lease at this point, excuse me, Ellen, the lease right now is for 6 days a week because there was a prior commitment to the winter market there on Saturdays. Right. So the plan is to break down on Friday night and then reset up on Sunday morning so that as the vaccine becomes available, we would have that space up and ready to be able to provide the immunizations. And then the winter markets lease is through the end of April. So as of May 1st, then we would have it 7 days a week.
Right. Until then, are you going to use a different space for that 7th day?
We have not looked at that. No.
We don't have really the vaccine for mass clinics 6 or 7 days a week at this time. We are continuing to use the first floor of the health department, which has been converted completely to vaccine administration in the last month. But I wouldn't call that a mass
vaccine. If I hear you right,
clinic.
then it isn't space and isn't the limiting factor. It's actually the vaccines that are the limiting factor.
Yes, very much so.
And for what it's worth, I was on a call with one of Senator Daines' staffers yesterday and reinforced the need for more vaccine to be flowing to the state of Montana. So,
yes.
Do either of the Jasons have anything you'd like to add? I saw Jason Emery pop up on the screen here, or Jason Hauser.
Yeah, I can fill you in. So we certainly went into high gear with our teams to try and make this space come online as quickly as possible. So electricians are out there today terminating electrical cables and getting outlets where we need them. Data cabling. Fortunately, there was quite a bit of infrastructure already there that we were able to repurpose without completely starting from scratch. The internet provider has facilities in the space, so hopefully that'll come online fairly quickly. We do have some equipment on order to get it in. We have some in stock already that we're currently configuring. So it's really as soon as the internet connection comes up, within a half a day, we should be fully live and have network, phone, the whole capability. Hauser's crew is, he has his contractor out there doing keys so we can secure the space. And that'll be different keys based on needs. So like the vaccine storage will be different from, the main entrance. So we can kind of control that and get it done appropriately. And we'll have security, so there'll be cameras and things on some of the public areas and on the vaccines as well. So I think we're sitting pretty well, and the internet provider is well aware of the purpose of this space, so they're doing everything they can to get us online as quickly as possible.
That's great.
Maybe Pam already said this, or Ellen, how many people are we able to run through this space in what's a batch, an hour or so of?
It's a pretty large space, and I don't think I can tell you the maximum right now because we're really just focusing on how many doses we can get this week to run through. But we hope get to a point where we know what that maximum is.
Wow, that's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. I think this is all over the country. At least that's what the national media says, but hopefully it'll change soon.
It is. I mean, it's a lot of, you want to plan for doses, but you don't really have doses. So there's some chicken and eggs in there, but I think you're just hearing the tip of the iceberg of what a whole team of people have done, from legal through the Jasons and Pam, and then our vaccine group, to even get us this far today. So we really appreciate that.
Well, and I would say, contrary to what some who might be inclined to not give the benefit of the doubt to anyone, or are inclined to think you guys are moving ahead as expeditiously as possible under the circumstances, and are not simply sitting around and delaying getting this up and running. That's not the case.
No, we've been giving vaccine. We converted our entire first floor about a month ago to vaccine at 301, and we're doing that. But the mass clinic setting we'll be able to do more and faster. And I think we need to really recognize our hospital partners in U of M right now, because they've been in a position to get those large dose trays of Pfizer that have to be that super frozen. And they've been, the hospitals in particular have been vaccinating away as well.
Thanks, Ellen. Oh, Juanita?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I see Martin's on the line. Does he want to?
Yeah, are there any members of the media who have questions or would like to weigh in?
Ellen, just real quick, how many doses a week are coming in, and kind of how does that work on the county receiving doses from the state who receives it from the federal government?
So right now, the maximum the entire county will get is 1,500 a week. And we actually have 20 providers registered. So with that small amount of doses, it's really only going to be initially those that can receive mostly the large Pfizer doses that you can look at mass clinics. And so that's the 2 hospitals and U of M. And so our doses will come out of those deliveries, and the vaccine coordination team is looking at, all of those that eventually will be able to get doses, and they should be getting their website. I actually think it was up last night, but I think they're announcing today. So people will be able to see who have doses. So what we're hoping with the overall concept is that you can go to your provider or you can go to a public clinic if you don't have a provider. It's just that not every provider is going to initially have doses, or not every public clinic will initially have doses.
So Ellen, you're saying providers, but it sounded first like it was just the 2 hospitals.
Well, they have very large ambulatory care clinics, probably the largest in town, right? All of the different doctors and providers' offices that they have. So they are coming up with a system for 1B in which they will call in or allow in some other way to register the clients who normally go to them for their medical care.
So let's say like a clinic is leasing space from one of the hospitals would get that clinic vaccines, and then people who use that clinic because their primary care provider is there would be able to get the vaccine. Is that kind of what you mean?
Actually, it's actually their own clinics. I'm not sure if you're aware of the extensive ambulatory care clinics and primary care clinics that are actually owned and operated by Providence and by Community Medical.
Oh, so even if the name of the clinic is different, it could actually be owned by one of the hospitals.
Absolutely. Like Grant Creek Clinic, for example, is a Providence.
Is like Western Montana Clinic. I'm just using their name because they're big. Are they owned by one of the hospitals?
No, they are not, but Providence is working with them for some of the larger vaccine supply they're able to receive. They are working with Western Montana Clinic to extend vaccines to those high-risk clients as well. So all of that activities begins this week.
And Ellen, and just to clarify, out of the 20 or so providers that you mentioned, are there ones that are not affiliated with either of the hospitals?
Yes. Yeah, I don't even have the whole list, but I know that it will be going up when the vaccine coordination team puts it up, and then it'll show which ones have vaccine, and each provider will put up a link or some information about how you can register at that particular location. And then there's the overall call team, and there'll be an extension onto the call center that we already have, so people can ask for that extension. So just as they used to be able to ask for testing, they will still be able to ask for testing, or they could ask for vaccine. And that's going to help coordinate people in.
And Ellen, what role is OEM playing in the kind of coordination among these 20 providers?
OEM is the vaccine coordination team.
Great.
So the health department is serving in a vaccinating role and also in setting up public access through the public clinics when we can get the vaccine to do that.
Great. I just wanted to hear that said out loud. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. Any other questions from the media or otherwise?
All right. With that, Dave, I'll make a motion that we approve this lease agreement for the use of the former Lucky's Market, and hopefully we'll get some vaccines soon.
Yeah, thank you. Second.
And this would be the motion as amended, as described by Chris and Anna Conley. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, for all your good work on this.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Pam. And Chris, you will be the one who has our final item here. That's an action item today. This is collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, I wish mine was as exciting as Ellen's. It's not. So this is the successor collective bargaining agreement for the staff that works at the Missoula Public Library. We have been in negotiations intermittently due to COVID since the summertime, but we were finally able to wrap those up. There's really not big changes in this particular contract. Of course, recognizing still we had to incorporate the Janus decision. So just as a reminder, that case came out of the Supreme Court. It's called AFSCME, which is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees versus Janus, and did away with union representation fees. So we needed to clean up the language in this contract to make it comply with that Supreme Court decision. Of course, we complied with Janus when it was decided, but we need to clean up the language so it matches that practice. Then, of course, it has a wage increase that falls inside the library's parameter this year for their board, and continues that move towards $15 as well. So it continues to move some of their staff up in that with some new job descriptions and kind of recognizes the move from the old library building to the new library building and some of the way that the duties changed for staff in there. It also broadens, the last piece I'll just highlight for you, it also broadens the membership. So previously members had to be full-time or more than, I might get this wrong, it's either 20 or 25 hours a week to opt into the union. This will allow all employees, as long as they're not temporary employees, to have that choice whether they choose to join the bargaining unit or not. So those are the main changes inside the contract. So not big changes, but some to clean up language and make it match the new library building, which, as you heard in your last meeting, will hopefully be able to open as soon as vaccinations, which Ellen just talked about, are a little more widely available, which we're all hoping for. So.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry. This will come to you via DocuSign from me once it's approved, assuming you approve it.
And I'm so glad we have someone as expert in collective bargaining as you, Chris, on our staff.
No kidding.
Yeah. Thanks. It's a whole team effort. There's no doubt about it. So we have great staff.
Thank you. Absolutely. A request to what are we saying? Approve the successor collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, I'll second that.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, correspondence. We have a letter before us to the federal delegation supporting direct aid to local governments. Chris, do you want to describe this item?
Yeah, and I'll ask Allison if she's got a moment to tag in, because Allison did an amazing job writing this. So as you know, there is talk of, I'm going to just call it a third version of CARES, although from the Biden administration. And so the hope is, as you know, the last package, which came out of the Senate just before the end of President Trump's term, did not include any funding for state or local governments' response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so this is a request directly to our delegation to ask them in this next package to consider funding for local governments, but also to consider there were a lot of challenges around the original CARES Act and the way the funding was distributed. If counties had more than 500,000 people in them, then the funding went directly to the counties and they kind of had local control over it. And if it was less than 500,000, the state, and we were really fortunate, I will just say, in the state of Montana, in the fact that our governor and others did direct funding towards local government, even though it was through a reimbursement mechanism. Many other states surrounding us did not have that kind of experience where really next to no money was passed on to local government. But the request here is for them to directly provide those funds to local governments and to lower that population threshold to a number that's, actually more reasonable with what county populations are around the United States. There were less than 24 counties that meet the $500,000 threshold. So really most places did not get direct funding. And so it created real challenges for us. So this is a request for them to directly fund that to local governments so that we can address the needs of citizens immediately. So.
Wow, I had no idea that states surrounding us didn't have the same sort of reimbursement plan.
I didn't know that either. That's Good on us.
Yeah, we were really fortunate.
Wow.
Yeah, we were really fortunate. I participate in a group that is a collection of chief administrative officers and county and city administrations that includes a 5-state region: Wyoming, the 2 Dakotas, Montana, and Idaho, in that larger region. And listening to some of our partners in those other communities say that, you know, they were really cut out of reimbursement largely, and saw a very limited ability to access funding, made me very appreciative, even though we had our challenges with the state's reimbursement system, to have that opportunity, because we've certainly incurred a lot of costs around response.
No, that's great. And I certainly hope our congressional delegation is receptive to our request, because populations are relative, and in the state of Montana, we are the 2nd largest county in the state, and so this 500,000 population threshold seems like a one-size-fits-all for the entire nation that does not necessarily work for a state like Montana.
Exactly.
Okay, well, look forward to signing that once it shows up in the inbox. Moving on to discussion items, unless there's any other correspondence we need to discuss, other than my own bloated inbox following the New York Times article. There's been plenty of correspondence flying related to that. Legislative session. Chris,
yeah, so we have
you again.
It's me again, but we have a great legislative team, most of whom are able to be with us on the call here. So, of course, Sarah, Emmy, Allison, Casey, Ann, and I are all meeting first thing in the morning to talk about legislative bills, so they should all feel free to jump in here. We had 3 that we wanted to bring to your attention today as we talk about this. I'll start with the good. So there is a bill that's been introduced. It is House Bill 187 that would allow for the county and cities to consider a local option tax without a population limit. We assume that you would like to weigh in positively, as that has been an issue.
Can we weigh in heavily?
Well, we can weigh in as heavily as they listen to Missoula. But I don't know if one of you is interested in speaking on that bill. That bill is being introduced by Representative Fern out of Whitefish into Senate taxation. It is up tomorrow. We do have Representatives Marler and Thane on that commission, and luckily I'm just reading from notes. Ann and Allison and everybody else is done a great job.
I'd love to do it, because I have a whole bunch of the text still in my head from gas tax, which is the same story basically. Unless either one of you guys are chomping at the bit, I'm shocked. Passion a little.
I'm shocked that you wanted to step up for this opportunity, but no, I think you're the man.
So
I have that tourist story so scorched in my brain. I'm ready to unleash it.
Yeah. So we will. I'll ask Sarah or Emmy or Allison or Ann if we can get you guys registered, because of course there's a registration cutoff. But even if we can't here, there will be more opportunities when this bill will be heard. So we'll also work on something.
Chris, are there any Republican sponsors of this?
Not that I saw. There's just the one sponsor currently listed on the bill, and it is a Democrat. So
it's going to be squashed like a roach in committee.
I would imagine it's not going to make it out of committee, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't hear from us. So,
Juanita?
Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, Josh, at noon today, right? Is that when we have to be, or Josh has to be registered?
It's being heard tomorrow in taxation.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I apologize. I don't know what time taxation is. I bet Ann or one of the other folks already looked it up.
It's at
What's
8.
the registration deadline to testify?
There's a noon the day before, so we'll need to get you registered right away, Josh. And it's at 8 tomorrow morning. We'll get it on your calendar.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, then I'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah, no worries. On to the not as wonderful bill. So, and we have a little disagreement, not a disagreement. We have different positions on this bill, so we need to know where the commission would like to land on this. So the next bill is HB 148, which would revise the property reappraisal cycle for Class 3 and Class 4 property, so residential property. back to a 6-year reappraisal cycle from the current 2-year reappraisal cycle. So I just a little bit of history here, so you can understand why there's this issue kind of teeter-totters both ways. In 2015, Missoula County weighed in support of moving from a 6-year reappraisal cycle to a 2-year reappraisal cycle, so that and the arguments largely made at that time were coming out of the last recession, folks' amount of property taxes and value of their houses were still reflected as going up because it was a 6-year cycle, and it didn't reflect the crash that had happened. So when their home values fell, it never showed that for 4 years for most of those folks, because reappraisal had just been done, and then the market crashed, and then they had to wait 6 years before their house got reappraised. And so it created a lot of issues around the state. So the state looked at a 2-year reappraisal. Missoula County supported that move to a 2-year reappraisal so that it would more accurately reflect what markets are doing at the local level, and to help make budgeting a little more consistent, because a 2-year reappraisal cycle lets us know, obviously more quickly, what available resources we'll have. The argument against—
good arguments for a 2-year reappraisal cycle.
Now give us the flip side.
Yeah, Andrew's on the call, so he can make the good arguments for the flip side. I'll quickly summarize them, and then of course Andrew and Ann and everybody else should feel free to weigh in, as should anybody on the call. The argument against is that it does, on the property owner's side, create what, with house values, as we're seeing in Missoula and Bozeman and other places, kind of going up so quickly, it can cause issues around home affordability, right? Because with that fast reappraisal cycle, when you're in the boom piece of the market, your value of your house can jump quite dramatically instead of being leveled out like the 6-year reappraisal does. And so it does create some affordability issues around taxes. And Andrew can explain it in far more detail and with greater understanding than I can, but that is kind of the counter argument to it. So
Andrew, on the 6 year, is there some kind of natural adjustment, or is it just a big whiplash in year 6?
Well, I think the whiplash is really occurring with this 2-year reappraisal cycle, because we're going almost nothing in the first year, and then we have these giant movements in the second year, and that's what's really killing the residential homeowners right now. And maybe it's just because it's an up market. If we were to have a 6-year reappraisal cycle, these extreme values would be feathered in over a 6-year period, and it'd be a little more predictable. And the folks that have these, I mean, what I'm feeling in the calls I'm receiving is from people like up in the Rattlesnake who have homes that they've lived in forever, and these new homes are being built or resold, and their property taxes are going up because for no good reason, except that everybody else's are going up around them. And I got a call from a woman up in the Rattlesnake working 2 jobs and having to move out of her home because she's elderly and on a fixed income, and this whipsaw is really killing her. And so
could you describe the feathering in? Because if there's no change from year 1 to year 6 in our market, year 6 could be a complete doubling of the value. So what's the percentage increase from year 1 to year 2, year 3, 4, 5, 6, so it doesn't feel so jarring?
I believe it's 16% of the value will be increased over those 6 years, and then in year 7 you'll have another reappraisal. So if the market is leveled out, it may go down. If it's gone up a little, it may go up, but then it would be feathered in over another 6-year period.
And do you think that would still provide us in local government with predictability for budgeting? It sounds like it would. If we knew what it was, we could just do the math, but I want to hear your take.
I think it would. I think the potential for having lower taxable values on homes is a possibility. I mean, we may not be able to get as much tax revenue as we were able to with the 2-year reappraisal cycle, but I think feathering it in would make it a little easier on the taxpayers. And I can know
it's come year 6, it's going to spread out the pain for the sorts of folks who you're describing, but eventually they're going to be paying that. yeah, it might not be this year, but if someone is teetering on the edge of being able to afford the property taxes, it's going to be year 6 is going to realize the full amount of the pain.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave. I mean, I can argue both sides of this. I hear a lot of people out there screaming for tax relief, and I thought perhaps I don't believe this bill has legs to get through, the Senate and on through the governor's office. I thought we might want to take a support position, just letting the legislature know that Missoula County is interested in some sort of property tax relief. This may not be the right mechanism, but
Andrew, would we still have predictability?
Sure. Yeah, we would know, what the values were and how they'll be feathered in over the next 6 years.
So it wouldn't adversely affect our ability to do a good job in budgeting?
No, it wouldn't. It might lower our overall taxable values from a year-to-year basis.
But if we needed more money, we would just raise more mills. I mean, it's only part of the equation, if I understand it right.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it does seem disingenuous to say, oh, look, we're not raising property taxes, we're just letting house values go up, when actually that is a version of raising taxes.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dave.
No, Chris, you'd mentioned some perhaps internal disagreement on this.
You're hearing it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, are there other departments who have weighed in one way or another on this, or?
No, so the other we checked with was Tyler, who didn't feel that there was a real impact to his department, which, obviously does the tax billing piece of it. And so Andrew and Tyler are who we would turn to in this case. And so just looking at our legislative history of having supported 2-year reappraisal, it's a little different than this message. And that may be fine, because we may have learned from the 2-year reappraisal that the 6-year reappraisal cycle was better, right? So I just wanted to have that conversation with you, because we're sending these messages on your behalf to see where we fall. And if you want, I can throw up on the screen my property tax bill, and you can kind of see, looking at the history of the house that we have, what the difference looks like.
Yeah.
Chris, while you're doing that, I'm going to have to step away from my computer to get a power cord here, but for either you or Andrew, is there anything magic about year 6? What about a 4-year reappraisal cycle?
I mean, if there's feathering in, it feels like that's the key point, that there's no whiplash.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it would 4 years split the difference if that's if we're trying to minimize the whiplash. You'd still get some whiplash, but maybe it wouldn't be a complete C-spine fracture. I don't know.
just thoracic spine.
So the property tax bill that's up here is for the house that I live on River Road.
Make it a little bigger, please.
I can try see on my screen.
Well, there you go. Perfect.
How's that? Is that better?
Great. Thank you.
Okay. So if we go back, here's roughly 2008 is when that crash occurred. You can see the house that we lived in was going up about $40 roughly in each of the 6 kind of subsequent years as we go through. And I mean, it varied a little bit because we probably had some levies come on that weren't on before and those kinds of things. And then in 2015 is the legislative session where we passed 2-year reappraisal. So the big jump occurs then in 2017 because we had to finish out the 6-year phase-ins. And so 2017 is that first jump, and you can see there's a pretty big jump, $480 a year that happens. And then we kind of go to the, every other year. So there's a small increase in 2018, then a big jump. And, they're not huge jumps, but those are, that's kind of what we've seen is that, as Andrew pointed out, it becomes these bigger jumps every 2 years versus this kind of flatter, $40 to $50 kind of increases that were occurring.
Do we have some sense of who out there is supportive or not of this?
I don't. I mean, one of the options we would have would be to listen to the testimony and send our comments after. And when we have a better idea of what the where the committee is and who the folks are that are both in opposition and support of.
I also just emailed Rebecca to see if she knew where Mako was on this bill. I don't know off the top of my head. Chris, do you? You might.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know on this one.
They didn't talk about it on Friday, so.
Yeah.
So like the real gist here is we're just trying, Missoula County is trying to show some support for some sort of, or interest in tax relief or property tax relief. Like, because there's going to be whiplash, which you just said, no matter what.
Yeah, it's
just trying to say.
It's just how often that occurs.
The county is trying to reduce property tax pressure, but it.
I mean, do you feel, Andrew, like the 6 years smooths it out more, so there's less spikiness to this curve?
That's what I think. That's why it was put in place originally, was to feather in the increases. It's not a perfect system either way, 2 years or 6 years, and I think the 6 year just helps ease the burden. But as Dave says, year 6 you're going to feel it no matter what. But then that next year is a reappraisal. So that after this, I mean, take the current housing market. I think this is a bubble. I think we all realize that real estate prices are cyclical, and 6 years from now we may be out of the bubble. Housing prices may come down. I think as interest rates and inflation works its way back into the system, interest rates will come up, mortgages will get more expensive. The free money that's now going into the stock market will cause the stock market to decline, so people won't be buying houses as frequently. Inventories will be up, so I think all in all, housing prices will level off or go down within the 6 year period. So. But maybe
Andrew, if maybe this goes back to the impetus for changing to 2 years a decade or so back. If during this 6 year time frame there is a leveling or hypothetically even a precipitous drop, you're not going to realize that on your tax bill until the reappraisal 6 years from now, because we're locked into a steady increase over that 6 years. So at some point there could be a kind of a parting of ways where you're paying more by way of property tax based on appraised value that's higher than what your home is truly would be appraised at that moment in time.
You're absolutely right, Dave. And it's a double-edged sword. It's and it may be just reflective of this crazy market we're in right now, and I think that's where the people are really finding the pain. And I'm not convinced that going to the 6 year reappraisal cycle is the solution, but there's got to be some sort of property tax relief out there. I mean, it's more the burden is being placed on residential homes and being taken away from corporations and centrally assessed properties, and the residential homeowners are really bearing the burden of the majority of the property tax in Montana right now.
So maybe that should be our message, is that Missoula County supports the fact that there needs to be residential property tax relief. We would encourage the legislature to seriously consider the areas where we've seen significant declines, centrally assessed, large commercial properties. And we'd encourage the legislature to look for other taxing options, such as local option tax, to allow local to provide direct property tax relief.
And
maybe that's the message. We don't necessarily say we support 6 year or 2 year. What we say is we think you're looking into the wrong basket.
Yeah. I think that's the right message. The motive here is property tax relief and to spread the burden beyond the folks who are carrying it right now. The motive, the impetus is great, but the proposed solutions here might not be right on. They're a little off mark.
Okay.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I agree. Yeah, that's I was trying to find the words to get there, but you're right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, we can definitely craft a message along those lines to get to our representatives. The last one, just to make you aware of, and just to take your temperature on, that I believe you'll want to oppose, is HB 200. And this establishes laws pertaining to sanctuary cities / counties in Montana. And so obviously this would require Missoula City and County, and no county or city in the state of Montana is doing this, prohibit them from being a sanctuary city where you in essence don't enforce immigration and laws.
Can you put that title in?
Yeah, it's HB 200, establish laws pertaining to sanctuary cities in Montana, although the actual bill includes cities and counties, even though the bill title just says cities.
Oh.
My thought is to oppose this as both an intrusion into local government, but also the fact that law enforcement in the field should make the decision when they're in the field addressing these issues, not the legislature setting up arbitrary and kind of capricious sideboards that have no, I mean, it really has no ability to be enforced. It's bad policy and it's bad law is what it really comes down to.
That's all.
Hopefully, yeah, oppose the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I like your argument against it, and as opposed from getting into the actual issue on immigration, this is much more about where control actually lies around any specific issue.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Chris, if it might be worth reaching out to the county attorney's office, because when we had some similar discussions in the past, there's some, what I think the legislature might be asking is on some shaky constitutional and legal grounds. So
are they asking local law enforcement to not enforce federal laws?
No, in this case, they're making it so local government would, in essence, compel people to enforce federal laws, which, again, that's why I said really law enforcement has to be able to exercise their discretion in the field. Prosecutors need to be able to exercise their discretion in charging, and courts need to be able to. It's bad law and bad policy just to say you shall always do something when there are lots of circumstances, and I'm going to pick on the pandemic right now, where that may not be the most pressing issue, and we can't necessarily accommodate those things. But it's been our priority for a long time. So,
yep.
Those are the exciting bills I had for you today. Under your meetings piece, I know Anna has one quick update for you, if she's still on. So I'm not sure if she had to drop off, and if not, I just wanted to, it was just about she's still here. Great. I'm going to stop talking.
Anna Connolly.
Hey guys. Hey, and just to follow up to the last item, I think that what Dave is remembering is Matt Jennings working with law enforcement and the commission some years ago on some of these immigration enforcement issues. And since Matt's on the criminal side now, I think that would be an appropriate thing for Brian West to get involved in, who represents the sheriff's department. So Chris, if you had any follow up with him, that would be fine. I wanted to let you know that last night the city council voted to postpone enforcement of the vaping ordinance that's coming before you guys on Thursday. They have been sued, and our health officer has been sued. They decided to postpone the effective date to March 1st. And the idea is that the legislative session may essentially void the ordinance, and they may have to start incurring lots of legal fees to defend an ordinance that would be voided by legislation anyways. So they've just put a pause on that ordinance, and that's supposed to come before you for final adoption on Thursday. And so I would recommend that you do not consider final adoption of the ordinance at this time, but instead you just continue that to wait and see how it plays out at the city level.
So Anna, on that front, just procedurally on Thursday, since it's on the agenda already, allow for public comment on that item, but we're just not going to deliberate to take any formal action.
Yeah, I would just, you could allow for public comment if you'd like, and then, yeah, I would just continue any deliberation or decision on the matter until there's further progress at the city level, and that probably won't be for some number of months.
Okay. Thanks for the update, Anna. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else event-wise, meeting-wise, or otherwise?
I just had a quick message for Josh. You're registered for tomorrow morning, so you should get a confirmation in your email, and you should get a Zoom link in your email to join via Zoom on your computer.
And it'll be on my calendar too?
It is on the BCC calendar.
Perfect. Thanks. That's really helpful.
Yep.
All right.
I just had one quick COVID update for you. because we need to end on good news, and Adrian provided me a little bit of good news and Andrew a little bit of good news right before this meeting started. FEMA has said that they will cover costs associated with vaccination clinics and vaccination coordination at least 75%. So we would still be responsible for the 25% match. President Biden's does include in his requested relief for FEMA to bump their funding up to 100%, but that has not been decided. But we do at least know that 75% of the cost FEMA has now deemed will be FEMA eligible, which is a huge lift. And Adrian has been pushing that with the state, who has been pushing that with FEMA. So while I'm sure there were lots of players, I like to think it was because of Adrian in our office.
I think that's where the credit should fall.
So
nicely done.
That it's even part of the conversation at the federal level that local governments, all of our costs should be reimbursed, since this is where the actual work is happening.
Yeah.
You would like to think that would be a factor.
Excellent.
Great news.
All right, Chris, you always should keep a few positive items like that in your back pocket to end meetings with. So
just in case.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Oh, does Dory have something?
Bye. What's that?
Dory has something. You're on mute, Dory.
Oh, Dory.
She's still muted.
I'm not seeing a hand up from Dory.
There she is. Her voice is small.
This is post. Can you stay on for a minute, Dave, with Violet?
Oh, just me. Okay. All right.
Just you.